Yields. I now recognize the gentlelady from Georgia, Ms. Greene, for 5 minutes of questioning.
Secretary Mayorkas, I want you to look at these innocent Americans. Do you see them?
I do, Congresswoman.
They are dead. They're from Dalton, Georgia, in my district. They're dead because a 17-year-old, likely affiliated with the cartels, was smuggling illegal aliens into our country in Texas, breaking our laws, and this happens every single day in our country. Earlier this week, 8 Republicans joined the Democrats and protected your job. But I want you to know, you have a short time coming. You can honorably resign, or we are going to impeach you, and it's happening very, very soon. Mr. Wray, do you remember on October 18th when the Capitol complex was illegally occupied, breaking same laws that you have hunted down Americans for from January 6th? Are you familiar with this?
I don't recognize the picture that you're holding.
Well, because maybe your agents haven't been doing a good job into investigating the organizers that broke the law, illegally occupied this very building that we're sitting in right now, and over 300 of them were arrested. Some of them attacked police officers. I haven't seen on the news where the FBI is hunting them down with helicopters, tanks in the streets, raiding their homes with flashbangs, targeting these people, watching these people, throwing them in jail for them to stay in pre-trial in solitary confinement for years before they ever face trial. You want to know what this says? I'll tell you. This is one of the organizers' phones, and this is a chat, and it says at the top, Global Intifada. Now, while we're talking about terrorism today, are you familiar with the term intifada?
I've certainly heard the term.
Do you know the definition?
I'm not going to try to define it, but
It means Arab uprising or jihad. Are you concerned about jihad in this country?
I am, and I have consistently testified to that effect.
Yes, but are you interested in using the FBI? You are the director of the FBI. Do you hunt down terrorists in our country? Those that would be responsible for jihad?
Absolutely, and that's why we've had jihadist-inspired terrorism at our highest national threat priority level since the day that I started as FBI director.
Do you still use the Southern Poverty Law Center as a source? You use them. The FBI used the Southern Poverty Law Center as a source when targeting Catholics. Are you still using the Southern Poverty Law Center as a source?
Congresswoman, what I think you're referring to is the so-called Richmond intelligence product, which as soon as I learned about it, I was horrified, withdrew it. We had an inspection done, and part of the problem that we found with that particular product by that particular office is precisely what you're talking about, the reliance on the Southern Poverty Law Center and the way in which they relied on it.
Well, you relied on the Southern Poverty Law Center, but I would have you know, Mr. Wray, that this one right here, this person involved in the Global Intifada group that illegally, they broke the law, came in and occupied the Cannon Office House building, interrupted Congress, interrupted hearings. Right here, Katrina Bleakley is the lead attorney for the Southern Poverty Law Center. Were you aware of this?
Congresswoman, as I said, I haven't seen the photos that you're holding up before.
Maybe, well, I posted them on my Twitter account. It's public. You know, maybe
I don't
you guys
spend a lot of time on Twitter.
Well, you know, oh, I'm sure you do, because the Department of Homeland Security, organized with other offices, has censored many Americans, including myself.
I'm not part of the Department of Homeland Security.
Right, Mr. Wray, you should be interested in investigating terrorism, and this right here is proof that we had terrorists in our own office building. Global Intifada. And you rely on the Southern Poverty Law Centers. Katrina Bleakley is one of the organizers. I'll send this over to your office so maybe perhaps you can stop targeting innocent grandmothers and veterans who walked through the Capitol on January 6th and might actually go after people tied to Hamas, tied to Hezbollah, and likely Iran. Mr. Wray, are you interested in members of Congress that are organized and participating in a Facebook group that has ties to Hamas?
We're not investigating people for participating in a Facebook group.
A Facebook group that is tied to Hamas?
We have multiple investigations into individuals affiliated with Hamas, and they're active investigations.
You're going to tell me as FBI director you will not investigate Americans or United States members of Congress that are linked to known terrorists?
That's not what I said.
Are you going to investigate or not?
We are going to investigate individuals who are affiliated with Hamas if they meet our standards for predication, which are longstanding standards set by this department and the prior department and the department before that.
I would hope to God that intifada and jihad and terrorists in our very country would be something that you would prioritize instead of a 3-hour event that happened at the Capitol nearly 4 years ago, Mr. Wray. I yield back my time, Mr. Chairman.
The gentlelady yields. I now recognize Mr. Menendez. I think you're up next, sir.
Thank you,
Gentleman from New Jersey for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Director Wray, earlier in your testimony, did you say that defunding the FBI would be, quote, a gift to the Chinese Communist Party, quote, more power to the cartels, and, quote, more damage to critical infrastructure?
I believe I said words to that effect, yes.
I appreciate that. Not everybody was in the room during that part of your testimony. I want to follow up on what my colleague, Mr. Higgins, said about, quote, armed oppression as one of the primary threats to the homeland. I agree that armed oppression is a massive threat to our homeland, but we need to be clear about what actually constitutes armed oppression. In this country, minority groups are routinely targets of weaponized oppression. Armed oppression is when black men cannot go safely for a run in Georgia. Armed oppression is when black youth cannot wear hoodies in Florida. Armed oppression is being LGBTQ in this country and not being able to safely go to a nightclub in Florida. Armed oppression is living in a Hispanic community and being targeted while going to Walmart in El Paso. Armed oppression is being black in this country and not being able to go grocery shopping in Buffalo without being targeted because of the color of your skin. Armed oppression is not being able to go safely to a church, synagogue, mosque, temple, or any place of worship to practice your faith. Domestic terrorists have targeted each of these locations and each of these groups in acts of armed oppression. Yet, when we in the House Committee on Homeland Security established our committee oversight plan for the 118th Congress, my Republican colleagues refused to include capital D, domestic terrorism in our plan. That, in my opinion, is where this committee is failing when we consider our threats to the homeland. New Jersey's 8th Congressional District is home to what Homeland Security experts call the most dangerous 2 miles in America, containing ports, airports, major rail lines, densely populated cities, and chemical plants. I'm proud of the work that President Biden and the New Jersey congressional delegation have done to improve the safety, reliability, and resiliency of critical infrastructure in North Jersey. The Biden administration has aggressively protected our critical infrastructure from foreign adversaries, with President Biden admonishing Russian President Vladimir Putin that certain critical infrastructure is off limits, a stark contrast to President Trump, who proposed a joint cyber unit with Russia. Secretary Mayorkas, when considering the threat landscape, how does the department take into account the risk posed by having multiple critical infrastructure sectors in close geographic proximity?
Congressman, the proximity of elements of our critical infrastructure only increase the challenge that we confront, but we work very, very closely with our critical infrastructure partners. The great majority of this country's critical infrastructure rests in the hands of the private sector. We work very closely with the private sector to ensure the security of our critical infrastructure. The remarkable men and women of the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency do a tremendous job.
And on the issue of cybersecurity, I want to address the current threat landscape. When we talk about cybersecurity, we're talking about threats that don't just come up from nation states like Iran, but often from a network of proxies and affiliated groups. Secretary Mayorkas, how is the current conflict in Israel giving us additional insight about Iranian-backed cyber threat actors?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the?
Of course. How is the current conflict in Israel giving us additional insight about Iranian-backed cyber threat actors?
I think what we are seeing, Congressman, and I'll defer to my colleagues as well, as the use of cyber as a tool in the repertoire of our adversaries. And we're seeing that play out in the Middle East conflict, just as we have seen it in the context of the unprovoked Russian aggression against Ukraine.
I appreciate that. One more question for you. In your testimony, you mentioned how critical it is that the CFATS program is reauthorized. I'm particularly invested in the CFATS program because there are 4 facilities covered by the program in New Jersey's 8th Congressional District. How does the CFATS program help keep our critical infrastructure safe?
Congressman, the CFATS program, the Chemical Facilities Anti-Terrorism Standards, allow us to inspect facilities to ensure adherence with the security and safety precautions that are necessary to
up the pace when I'm running. I always take what I want and I always give it 100. Don't need a bank, no I'm funded. Play the game like it's nothing. I'm always thankful for something. Don't take for granted, stay humble. Now wake up! It's time to look at the enemy. Look in the mirror if he is no friend to me. It's not working out, maybe it's the chemistry. It's time to break up so I can make a better me. Better believe in your mind, cause it's everything. You can mold, shape, find almost anything. All it takes is some time and some clarity to find your identity. It's mind over everything. I'm immortal. When I feel like this, I'm immortal. When I feel like this, I'm immortal. When I feel like this, I'm immortal. Don't stop, stepping up, don't stop. Back. I won't stop, I'ma fight until there's nothing left. It's so on, you're gonna be hurting bad, cause I've been to hell and back. You don't wanna make me mad, I stay strong, you will never see me crack. And if you get in my way, you're gonna feel the wrath. Gotta say it to my face while he's looking back. Mirror breaks after math, when I hate I attack.